Okay.
All righty, thank you. I'd like to call to order our March board meeting. Mr. Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Pleased to report we do have a quorum, and with a quorum, I'd like to move for approval the Board of Directors meeting minutes for February 22nd, 2023.
If it's okay, I'd like to ask for a quick edit or a clarification.
Do we have a second? Greg?
Thank you.
Second. Okay, now, any edits or clarifications?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'd like to have the minutes reflect the names of the officers that were elected at the February board meeting.
Very good. We will make that change. Any other edits or clarifications needed to the minutes? All right, hearing none, all those for approval, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. And I will turn it back over to the chair then to resume the meeting.
Okay. Kathleen, I'm assuming you brought this person back in.
I did not.
Okay. For the record here, we are spinning many plates at the moment, at least 3 that I can think of. And the first one is the preparation of our annual meeting. We have set April 25th as the meeting date, and we will be meeting at Sea Pines Country Club. The information is posted on our website. The meeting will also be conducted via Zoom and live streamed. Our date of record is March 24th. And what that means to you is anyone who is a POA member as of March 24th will receive a proxy and may vote at the annual meeting. The second plate that we're spinning is membership renewals. And I feel like 2022 was a pretty good year, and I hope that it will show in renewal and also in new members. As of today, we're about halfway to our goal, and in looking at the checks that we've received, about 92% are renewals and then 8% are new members. And it's always very gratifying to see the new membership come along. Members who haven't renewed by April 30 will be removed from our roster. And I for one, sure would hate to see that happen. So just a quick reminder for you. The third plate that we're spinning right now is covenant modernization. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about that later. But please know that we hope to have some definitive action by April 25th in time for our annual meeting. Mr. Treasurer, John, do you have a financial
Great,
report?
thank you, Paula. Yeah, no new financial updates since our last board meeting. And just to recap, our Q4 year-end financials are summarized in the meeting minutes we just approved. And I anticipate having a Q1 financial report after the close of this month.
Okay, thank you very much. Kathleen, a report from IMC.
Yes, ma'am. As of our last board meeting, we've had answered 101 phone calls. Around this time, it's mostly questions regarding the dues renewal process, help with logging into the website, making credit card payments, etc. We had a few new member joins with questions and a lot of questions still related to CSA, which we have provided the CSA contact information. 128 emails since the last board meeting, again, mostly for dues renewal questions. As of this morning, we have processed 791 checks for dues renewals or new members. In 2023 so far, we have 1,715 paid members, and of those are 1,577 renewals As always, the email address, if anybody has questions or concerns, is info@cpinespoa.com, and the cell phone is 843-422-7648.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
I'm hunting here for the ARB update. And Lee is not here to give it. I will say that in looking at it, I think it's the first ARB report that I've seen where there were no new pools approved. So we may be slowing down in that activity. Otherwise, I think it's business as usual. And I look forward to getting another report from him soon. Lori Wellinghoff is not here today. She's out of town, so I was going to give her communications update. And if you haven't figured out by now, she's one of our newer board members, but she's also like this Energizer bunny. And she continues to publish this fabulous newsletter that you're receiving. It's full of interesting and informative topics. If there are things that you're looking to learn more about, please email info@cpinespoa.com and let us know. Lori also looks forward to helping ensure the efforts to modernize our covenants, to make sure that they're well communicated and that we provide a channel for two-way communication to you and also from you. And in case you missed it, there was a survey in last week's newsletter, and I hope that you responded. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. This is a big deal. April's third Tuesday speaker series will not be at the community center. It will be at the USC Hilton Head, which is right outside of our gates. This is a one-time only move because the community center is chock-a-block full of heritage stuff and will be that way on April 18th when we host Mr. Charles Scarmanack. And for those of you who are not familiar with him, he was the Sea Pines Company's general counsel way back and was involved in the planning and the development of their numerous resort communities on the East Coast. And that includes our own Sea Pines plantation and resort. So that should be absolutely fascinating. The talk and Q&A will be from 5 to 6:30. That does not change. We appreciate the RSVPs. Also, and a change, no food and beverages allowed in the meeting room. It's a fabulous room, by the way. Let's see. Website, Carrie?
Oh, thank you, Paula. Not a lot to report. We're still going through some minor configuration changes. The most focus area right now remains on the new calendar section that we added. I'm working with Lori on getting those changes and some navigational changes within the website, but mostly aesthetics at this point in time.
Great. That's a great report. Thank you. Let's see, covenant modernization. A couple of thoughts here. One is I mentioned earlier that the board has put covenant modernization as a top priority this year. When the covenants were created, we were living in kind of what I call an electronic vacuum, meaning no internet, no email, no text, no voting online, no iPhones, no to a lot of stuff that we all live and breathe with today. So I had also mentioned earlier that we conducted a survey via last week's newsletter. And it's important that we hear from you because we can't represent you without this critical input. The survey question that we posed was, and I quote, would you like Sea Pines covenants to include an option for electronic communicating and voting versus our current mail-only policy? And the response was overly whelming in favor of an electronic option. 93% voted yes, and we had 7% that voted no. I've not seen numbers this high since I've been here. So with this type of response, we feel very strong, very comfortable moving forward on your behalf. So there will be more coming. Stay tuned. Let's see, legal. The referendum lawsuit that is in play right now is moving forward. The plaintiff filed an opening brief, and the defendants, which are your Sea Pines POA, CSA, and the resort, will be filing briefs on or around May 1st. So it's inching, let's put it that way. Let's see, land use, Greg Thompson. You're on mute at this point.
Thank you, Paul. Can you hear me now?
Mhm.
I think I mentioned at our last meeting that the Land Use Management Committee has been combined with the Infrastructure and Maintenance Committees. And we're kind of operating as a single committee and plenary sessions. And then there are 3 groups operating as task forces focused on land use and maintenance and infrastructure improvement. I think the change makes sense. We all kind of have overlapping interests, and so it seems to be well received by the members. Everybody that I've spoken with has been positive about it. The other point I would make is that we're new in this reorganization process, so we're a little late getting started. So we had our first organization meeting last week, and the task forces are meeting this week. CSA has taken a little bit different approach this year in terms of wanting to keeping the committees very focused. So I'm the vice chair. Tom Sharp is the chair of the committee. And so we are going to try and stay tightly focused. And I think our predominant effort, at least in the LUM task force, will be to go back over the rules and work with Ryan and staff and see which ones need to be tweaked in terms of, are they clear enough? Are they understandable by property owners? So if Ryan issues a letter of violation, do people understand what the problem is? So it'll be a common sense review. Hopefully we can simplify them a little bit, but we'll always have an eye towards enforcement. So, are they enforceable? That is pretty much what's happening with the land use management, the old committee, and part of the new arrangement. So I wanted to just also give you a quick update on the violations that we've had so far this year. The total from January 1 through March 14th is 263 violations, which is more than what we had last year at this time. And I think that's driven by the fact that we now have 2 land use monitors, and we're probably going to see a 3rd part-timer brought on in the high season. The correction rate, people responding to violations and remediating the problems, is very high. We really don't have a lot of problems with enforcement. Folks seem to want to follow the rules and keep the place looking nice. I just give you some percentages as to what the problem areas are. About 35% of the letters have to do with landscaping problems. Let's see, 21% are ARB, and our land use monitors do provide a service to ARB. ARB pays part of their salary. The other is, let's see, 17% are maintenance related, and those are really the top offenders. And this pattern stays the same whether you're looking at a month or the first quarter. So I guess I would summarize by saying we've got good property owners who are interested in complying with the regulations. There are some regulations that were written, 2 years ago and will benefit from a review. But Ryan does a great job, and he's got a new associate working with him. It's pretty quickly coming up to speed. So all things are good. We're looking forward to an exciting year and being part of a bigger group. And that's my report.
Yeah.
Carrie.
Carrie, question?
Yeah, Greg, thanks for the report. I do have a question. You mentioned about the ARB. What can you give some examples of what the ARB calls on the alum folks to perform?
Sure. A lot of it has to do with people doing either major or minor projects without a permit. So that's the first thing. If Ryan rides by and sees somebody, tearing a roof off or putting a dormer in their roof or putting a new driveway in and there's no permit, that would be a violation. But on unsightly job sites, you can go through the ARB rules, and basically he's the eyes and ears out in the community for ARB.
Gotcha. Now, does he have access? I mean, with the new NetSuite application that CSA is using, I'm wondering, does ARB use that? Or is there a way for him to, from his phone or from a?
Carrie, I don't know the answer to that. I would think that they do, but I'll check it out and let you know. But I don't know that right now.
I'm just curious as to how the workflow goes, if how efficient it might be, and how to develop those stats, because I think it's a great thing to be able to provide the community with the statistics and visibility into what they do and when they do it.
Absolutely. I'll let you know.
Thank you.
I think one of the bigger things too, Greg, is the fact that a third monitor will come in during the heavy time. I will tell you, and I don't mean to blow our own horn, but the effort that we started about 4 years ago in addressing a gap that the property owners were not receiving land use monitoring services from CSA. They were, but it was 1/2 of one head count. And now it's moved up to 2, and it will be 2.5 at certain times. I think that we're having to make up for many, many years of very lax management. And I'm thrilled really with the news that you're saying, that the property owners are very responsive. I mean, we all agree this is something we need and we want. So thank you again.
You're welcome.
I do have, Paul, I'm sorry, Greg, for you, I do have one other question.
Sure.
Part of what the town of Hilton Head has implemented this year is a new ordinance that I think potentially could impact alum, and that is on short-term rentals. The town is, obviously we're within the town, and the town is stating that for complaints of, music or beach towels, not being, stored properly or things of that nature, general nuisance, things like that, that short-term renters are going to be, how do I phrase this? Actually, the property management companies or the owners are going to be contacted by the town of the violations. And I'm
Correct.
wondering, how is that going to work here in our private community?
Well, I think it's safe to say our people will be the first line of defense or of action, and the town will come through the community on some schedule. It's, left up to them. But I think we're fortunate to have our own dedicated staff to enforce our rules. Now, our rules kind of you could say, are a layer on top of, or probably at a minimum in sync with the town rules. So the town really doesn't have the staff to get out and go through all the neighborhoods and gated communities. So for the most part, I think the town is relying on us. And then if we have issues around enforcement, that kind of thing, we can always refer to the town statute. So we have both our own land use rules, and then you have the town statute on what's allowable and what's not. And of course, the the ability to have a business license is related to, your conformance with the rules. And if you violate the rules and don't fix the problem, then you're putting your business license with the town at risk.
Hey, Greg, this is.
And I was just one other thing, Keith, and I think we will. I don't think I'm certain that we will. We won't share our database, but we will, when it's appropriate, where people don't comply, we will report that to the town.
Greg, this is Keith.
So that we work together. Yeah, Keith, sorry.
It's okay. I've provided at least the thought to a couple different folks at CSA, and I'll sort of formally provide it here as vice chair of the committee at CSA as well. Have we ever thought about or explored the idea of effectively being the contractor for the town for the land use monitoring within the gates of Sea Pines? As you said, our standards and the town standards are pretty much an overlap. There may be a few differences, and particularly if such a arrangement could be done under a monetary situation where we are effectively being a subcontractor for the town. Has that ever been discussed at all?
I think that there's been discussions about the relationship and how this is all going to work. And my understanding is that the town's expectation was that we would be the first line of defense, that we would be the first line for enforcement. And it's because they don't have the staff to do it. And so I don't know why they would pay us when their assumption is we're going to be doing it anyway, and they're backstopping us. I think is the way they think about it.
I think Keith's point's a good one though, because if you listen to the CSA call, and Greg, obviously you were there, you heard it. There's somewhere between 2,100 and 2,300 or so short-term rentals within Sea Pines.
Yeah.
Right now, you have to have a business license with the town. You also have to have a short-term rental permit. That short-term rental permit's $250. If you take, 2,400 or whatever, multiply that by the $250, that's over $500,000 in fees to the town for short-term rental permits. And
yeah, I'd just like to step in for a quick second, Greg, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
With the purpose, my understanding of the town, limited understanding, I freely admit, but of the town's short-term rental policy and the business license and the collecting of money is to enable them to hire staff to enforce the short-term rentals. So the land use is sort of a separate world from short-term rentals. They have identified that and they are funding that.
well, but there's overlapping, I believe, tasks done by what would be done by both organizations for short-term rentals, because in the meetings that I attended with the town, they're stating that it's their responsibility to address, if somebody gets a call for if there's a complaint for loud music at night, they're going to call the property management company. So, if the town is calling, then does Sea Pine Security call? I mean, there's some questions. I think that these things are obviously going to have to be worked out at some point in time.
Yeah.
But
I think it's safe to say the town is still figuring out how they're going to execute their policy. And my understanding is that their land use monitors work between basically 8 and 5. So there's nobody available after 5 o'clock. They have subcontracted a call center to a vendor. So, I mean, the town doesn't have a police force. They don't have a lot of resources in terms of people to put behind this stuff. And I think, Keith, I would say I would be reluctant to want to be a subcontractor to the town and be under their management. I think one of the benefits of being in Sea Pines and having the resources that we have is we control our resources and we don't have to take direction from anybody else. And I think that means we get better service and higher standards.
Well, I guess my only last thought, and I'll leave it at this, is that the other way to look at it is to say how many people, and I think this is where Carrie was going, do you want in the gates enforcing essentially the same things? Because the amount of overlap between their regulation and our land use monitor, it's pretty much the same. So if they haven't hired much, it strikes me as the opportune time to go to them to say, hey, we'll take care of both our land use monitor rules and the incremental part on your side, and have your call center funnel the call, and then the people within the gates of Sea Pines, our members, are only really dealing effectively with one group of people then for the enforcement side. That's the way I kind of think about it, which is why I missed the question.
I
Well,
think
the other point I would make too is, as somebody who's familiar with the short-term rental programs within Sea Pines, is there's conversation about double taxation because CSA has imposed a fee to short-term rental properties to cover expenses associated with traffic and security, and things that short-term renters do bring, which is certainly understandable. But when the town, it's kind of like safety and security. We have our safety and security through CSA, but then you also have Beaufort County. So I think we need to have some further conversations about this, potential double taxation. And to Guy's point, which I agree with, is there something that Sea Pines can do to get some of this funding, so to speak, from the town, so that these,
I
the
think
double
I think it's a
taxation-
reasonable question. I guess I'm not deep in understanding here, but I think that my preference would be that I'm in control of the resources, that I've got the resources funded, and that I'm not dependent on a local government body that pretty much doesn't have a lot of manpower to put on stuff. And to flip it around and make us an agent of them, I don't know. It's worth exploring, but my first impression is I wouldn't jump to do that.
Lori?
Yeah, Greg, a quick question. Have we looked at what the other communities are doing? Do they have full-time land use monitors?
I know that Palmetto Dunes does. I don't, and I think the Hilton Head Plantation does. The others I don't know. I would imagine they do. I mean, they've all got standards that they enforce. So somebody's doing that. So I don't know the details of how they do it.
But we would assume that the town is counting on all of those internal people to address things first and then go to them when they aren't able to resolve the issue.
I think that's a safe assumption. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think
Yeah,
just to kind of add some, the majority, I believe the majority of the communities don't allow short-term rentals. I think Sea Pines is somewhat of the anomaly. I think the town was specifically, when they were coming up with this, was focusing on a lot of the condominiums and other units that are in the Coligny area, where you really have I want to say, no regulation and no oversight by any type of regimes. So I think this is a conversation we need to continue.
I think it's Palmetto Dunes and Sea Pines would probably make up the bulk of the rental community, short-term rental. Shipyard as well. Ed, do you mind missing anybody?
Ed, do you have anything
Port
to
Royal
add?
doesn't allow it.
I think, just sort of walking up the highway, Sea Pines, Shipyard, Palmetto Dunes. I know Hilton Head Plantation doesn't. I know Indigo Run doesn't. So those are probably the three larger communities that that allow short-term rentals.
Thank you. Okay,
To be
duly
continued.
noted, Carrie. And I can definitely see both sides, and I do feel like there needs to be a little bit more clarification or differentiation between how it's handled behind the gates and how the town will be handling it, since they haven't really done anything yet. But anyway.
Yeah, Paul, just one last comment. I know that Sam has been in contact fairly deeply with Mark Orlando, and I think that they're still going through the how's this all going to work. So it's not totally sorted out yet. Yes, so it's a little hard to say how's this really going to work and who does what to who at this point.
Okay. Thank you very much. Membership committee, Lori.
Oh. I think between your opening comments and Kathleen's report, we've gone over the numbers. There is, the due date was March 15th for the dues. So at this point, there is a reminder postcard going out that should hit the post office this week. And I'm hoping that by the end of the month, a lot of those bills went into a pile and we'll see more coming in. And then there'll be a second reminder that will go out the third week in April. And after that, we're facing the deadline of April 30th, where we will purge the list and go forward with the list as we have it then.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Unfinished business. One of the things that I had mentioned was that Steve Alfred, our town councilman, would join us with updates. He had a conflicting board meeting, busy guy. For this one, we had changed our date, and so he was unable to make it. New business, we had talked about the annual meeting. I just wanted to speak a little bit more about that. The location that we picked, Sea Pines Country Club, excuse me, can accommodate 230 members. So this is going to require us to get our members to register so we can keep a pretty firm fix on people that are attending. The annual meeting is really a 30-minute review of 2022, a bit of a peek under the tent for this year, and really our financial status as well. Once that is over, then we begin our 50th anniversary celebration. And it's not like we hang out at the club, but we figured once every 50 years, a celebration at the club would be worthwhile. I'd like to also take a minute to thank the sponsors who are helping us with this, and that is Brightview Landscaping Services, IMC Resort Services, the Sea Pines Real Estate at the Beach Club, and the Sea Pines Resort, and the shops at the Sea Pines Center. So we expect to have a nice turnout and a really nice event. But back to the annual meeting and proxies, we're going to include an invitation in the proxies. And Kathleen, if you can fill us in a little bit on when you think those will mail.
Those are set to mail tomorrow, March 29th. Those who have a local address here in the surrounding area of Hilton Head should receive that the invitation and proxy within 1 to 2 business days. Those who are further around the country or out of the country may take 5 to 7 business days.
Okay, all righty. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there any other business? Okay. I'd like to call for an adjournment. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Move.
Okay, Greg. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We usually will take a 5-minute break before Q&A. However, we didn't go that long today, so we've gotten a couple of questions and I thought we could go directly to them. The first one is, we received 2 questions from a gentleman, Gary Mansfield. And his question is, was Sea Pines Property Owners Association called something else previously? And the answer is yes, and it was ASPO, the Association of Sea Pines Plantation Property Owners. And really ASPO, it was known by the acronym. And we changed our name. We're still ASPO, but we're doing business as Sea Pines POA. We did that about 1.5 years ago. And I guess we won't give ourselves a gold star if we're getting questions like this. So I think our next step would be to put formally ASPO for the next year or 2 so people get more acquainted with the name. But thank you for that question. The other question was, I think back in 2020, there was a discussion about commercial leaf blowers and noise. Was that issue ever resolved or a plan arrived at? And I'm going to let Greg address that one since it's a land use issue.
Thank you, Paul.
Mhm.
The CSA board adopted a standard at the December board meeting that essentially says leaf blowers cannot exceed 75 decibels. And the way that they started the implementation of that policy was to inform all the landscapers and landscape companies as to what the standard was, and they really got way more notice than a month. I mean, we started talking to them back in the early part of that year. So there's been plenty of notice, and they were again reminded of that when they signed up for their gate entry pass. Now, I spoke with Ryan, and the way that's being implemented is really dependent on if there's a problem, property owners calling the land use monitor or sending an email in and saying, I've got a problem with a leaf blower. And then Ryan will go out and get the serial number off the leaf blower. We're not doing noise monitoring and all that stuff. So it's really go directly to the equipment, get the serial number, and based on that, you can go to a listing that says what the dB limit is on that piece of equipment. And if it exceeds the 75 dB, they're told they can't use it. And there's follow-up to make sure that, that they have gotten new equipment or that that's been disposed of. So we do have a policy. I think it's still a problem. It was discussed at the last CSA board meeting, brought up in a question there. And I don't know what the answer is. I mean, we're doing our best to implement the policy, make sure people don't use illegal blowers, and we'll see, how long it takes to get compliance. But it's a difficult issue, and it was kind of a choice when the board passed the policy to either eliminate gas-powered blowers. We talked about it in our task force, and that's a pretty harsh move to make for a lot of the people who take care of properties in Sea Pines. Everybody's got to get an electric blower. So we're working our best to implement it, but you can't live here and not know that leaf blowers are noisy, and some are worse than others. I wish there was a simple solution, but that's an honest answer.
Thank you very much. Another question came in from Andrew. I believe this is Sakalaris. What is the position of Sea Pines POA on the recently passed business license requirements passed by CSA, which will be assessed to only Sea Pines non-resident owners who rent their property? It appears that this is in addition to the town of Hilton Head requirements for a permit and license. We have not taken a position on that. I'm not on the board of CSA, but I will say that their policy applies to all property owners, not just those that live out of state or some other place. I mean, if you own a property here, you're a property owner and you fall under their short-term rental policy. And yes, the town has one too. I would make sure that you're well aware of both if you are operating short-term rentals. Another question is, what is the authority for nonprofit CSA to issue business licenses? And the authority, CSA gains its authority from the 1988 covenants when it was formed. It also has some things that are granted to it by the 1994 South Carolina Nonprofit Corporation Law. Okay, we got a couple others.
Paul, just
Yes.
one thing I might say, I think the proper language is the CSA issues a permit, not a license.
Oh, forgive me.
Yeah, Ed can tell us the difference between it, but I think there's
Difference,
a clear
yeah,
distinction
okay.
between the two. So
Yeah,
the town does yeah.
Okay, thank you. There was a question here from Bob Johnson. Has the board taken a position on whether or not to allow e-bikes and sea pines? And the answer is no, we have not taken a position. I think it would be really redundant. CSA has identified this as Dave Ellis has identified this as a major issue. He has solicited input. He has gotten, I don't know, somewhere between 500 and 1,000 responses. He has worked to put together a task force. I expect a very thoughtful outcome from that. This is sort of, I think CSA is doing their job and we should let them do their job at this point. There is a last question from Carol Clack. She was concerned about several things, just the stress on our system during tourist season, but also is very concerned about the McMansions that are being built after people buy, and then constructed over a tear down. And she would like to suggest a new covenant that would limit either the number of additional bedrooms and bathrooms that you can add to a rebuild or limit the increased square footage. And she's aware that this would cause a huge uproar in the community, but we need to do something. So your point is taken, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. So Carol, thank you very much. Kathleen, are there any more other questions that have come in?
Yes. There is one. The bike gates at the main entrance to Sea Pines are almost always broken in the open position, which is a security concern. Could the Sea Pines POA reach out to security and or maintenance to help get this resolved? Their answer is usually the parts are out of stock, but this problem has been going on for 4+ years.
Okay. And the answer is, of course, we can reach out and see what's going on. The bike gates have not been working off and on for 4 years.
I have a couple more also.
Okay, did you forward them to me? Here.
I forwarded you a few. There's one at the top of your inbox from, well, at 4:34. And then there are a couple more
Okay.
that didn't make it to your inbox.
Okay, this is the one that you forwarded to me is from John Gottlieb, and he and I have been in communication. He has been in communication with the CSA and with our town councilman, and there's not a question here. I don't think I have an answer to not a question.
Okay.
Were there any others?
Yes, reading last month's minutes, I see that 15 dwelling units were transferred from South Beach Marina to Sea Pines Resort. Someone then mentioned that those transferred dwelling units are now being used for employee housing. Assuming true, how is this doable unless we are below the 5,890 allowed units, which I don't think we are. If not possible to answer at the meeting, would somebody look into this?
Yeah, why don't you please forward that to me? And I will work with Lee Stevens to get an answer.
And then there was another question about the leaf blowers,
Okay.
which I think Greg answered. And then under its articles of incorporation, ARC has several directors, including the chairperson of our POA. Therefore, our chair has knowledge of ARC because he is a director. Please advise as to how much our homeowner fees to ARB are being transferred to ARC. How much has been transferred in 2022, in 2021, and in 2020? What is being done with our fees once they are transferred to ARC? When did ARC last have a formal meeting of directors? Is there an accounting of funds that ARB has paid? ARB is a committee of ARC and we are entitled to know where our money is going under the covenant.
ARC is a private nonprofit corporation. It conducts board meetings. The ARB is a standing committee of the ARC, and that pretty much answers the questions.
Okay.
Anything else?
I do not have anything in the email.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, then thank you very much. We've already adjourned. I want to thank everybody for their time. And we've got some work to do, get some answers out there. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you, Paul.